Coming up today on Uncommon Sense, we talk to Dr. Joshua Russell, the headmaster of the Chesterton Academy of the Sacred Heart in Peoria, Illinois. Stay tuned. Welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. I'm Gretelyn Darkey, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Albert Sines.
Hello and good morning.
And also we are blessed to be joined here with Dr. Joshua Russell. Dr. Russell, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
And I know we chatted a little bit in the pre-show here about your background. Could you recap for us a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm in my 6th year as the Headmaster of Chesterton Academy of the Sacred Heart here in Peoria, Illinois, and previously had taught for about 10 years at the university level, primarily in the music field. I have a background as a concert pianist, and then also have some background in the aviation realm as well as a commercial pilot and flight instructor. But it's a great joy to be part of the Chesterton network, to have worked with the network at that national, international level, and to be serving here in Peoria.
I have to, because you said that, you mentioned that before, and you said it again. I can't go on without knowing, how do you cross between being a commercial pilot and being a concert pianist? Like, I expect you to say that you played the piano in the air. How does those two come together? Where did you go from one side to the other?
Yeah, it's a strange kind of thing. I know it's a really odd combination of background, and the two don't happen at the same time very well at all. But no, I was always interested in both of them from being a kid and music. And then I was around aviation with my family and learned to fly when I was pretty young and worked through some of the ratings. I don't know. There are some ways, ostensibly they don't go together, but at the same time, I think some of the fundamental skills that are required for both of those, both require a lot of attention to detail. It takes a lot of work and fortitude to go through the ratings. It takes a lot of work and perseverance to play an instrument well. And I don't know, I've just been attracted to both of those fields.
Some level of multitasking too, I imagine.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm a professional musician myself, so it's I personally know that we don't end up ever doing one thing, do we?
Not at all. And there's this, when you're in that realm of music, I think it opens you up to a lot of other interests. I've told students through the years a lot of time, the discipline that it takes to be a good musician applies really well to other fields. There are a lot of life lessons that you're learning in that do apply. And so I've through the years have seen many students that have gone on, when I was teaching in the collegiate world, they would have a music degree or something, but then end up going on into something else, architecture, medical field, become attorneys, whatever else that is. And that those life lessons and discipline carry over really well.
Yeah, I don't want to make this all about music, but I have heard from quite a few of the students that I've talked to, the alumni, that having, every Chesterton Academy student, I believe, sings in the choir. Is that correct?
Correct. That's right. That's right.
And many of the students that I've talked to, especially the young men, seems like they often don't want to, and then it comes out being one of their favorite experiences.
That is also correct. Oftentimes they really drag their feet on that, but it does end up being a favorite, and we're able to win them over a lot of the times, which is pretty exciting to see.
Wonderful.
So, Dr. Russell, how is it that you came to be a headmaster of the Chesterton Academy? Can you give us that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I had taught for nearly 10 years at the university level before coming to Chesterton Academy, and had just some wonderful experiences with students there and the training. And but the reality in the secular university was that I saw an expectation on faculty a lot of times to accept and promote a lot of ideology that were really not consistent with a Catholic faith and family lifestyle. And I remember in the spring of 2017, there were two founding families of this particular Chesterton Academy. And I had lunch with one of them, one of the founders, and we were sitting there at lunch, and he just slides this Chesterton Academy brochure across the table and says, just real nonchalantly, "What do you think of this?" And I spent a minute looking at it, and I remember my response was, I think this is the solution to a lot of issues that I'm seeing in the university realm today. And it was really just from that simple conversation over lunch that they began speaking to me about interest in teaching, interest in leading one of the academies. And after visiting, my wife and I spent a day up at Chesterton Academy of the Holy Family at the time in Downers Grove, Illinois. And after seeing the students in the classroom, these 14, 15, 16-year-olds who are really excited about Latin, about philosophy, about literature, it was just not something that I had seen very many places before. And we left that day thinking, we have to do this. We have to start this in Peoria and be a part of it. And it's been a great blessing. Obviously, it's a monumental undertaking, but to start a school, but it is a great blessing.
Wonderful. I know you have a nice large family yourself. Have your children been able to go through the academy yet?
We have two that are here now. So our oldest is 16 and is a junior, and then our second daughter just started this August. So has just gotten through her first quarter of high school, and that's a blessing too, to have them here as a parent in the school. I'm not certain that it's always they would always consider that to be a blessing to have dad as a headmaster, but anyway, it is from a family perspective.
Do they call you dad, or do they call you Dr. Russell?
It's Dr. Russell. It's Dr. Russell, and one of them in particular will even carry that into the house sometimes. It's a pretty entertaining thing to be around the dinner table at times.
At least, if there's a grade problem, they only have to face their dad one time, so that's good.
There you go. There you go.
Well, it creates an interesting question. The question really stands out in my mind. Like, if you could separate yourself out as a parent, Dr. Russell, and not as the headmaster, what is it like to witness your children going through the Chesterton Academy?
It is the thing that's really beautiful about it is that you see the way that they develop, and you have that close connection to them. Obviously, the familial connection, and you see them developing the way we've seen other students develop. They come in and you get exposed to these great ideas, the great ideas of civilization. You get exposed to truth, to beauty. You're in an environment where the other students are generally lifting one another up and trying to help support each other. And you start to see their talents and abilities take off. And but it's all in different ways, and some that you perhaps didn't expect to see. That all of a sudden there's a newfound interest in this subject material, or you start to see this leadership characteristic take off, and the confidence that builds. From a parent perspective is really great to see. And I don't know. There's a real excitement and enthusiasm for that, both as a parent and both as the teacher. And we want our kids to do well. We want them really, though, ultimately to fall in love with the highest things, that which is the highest, the true, the good, the beautiful. We want them to have that desire to see God and to pursue God. And that's something that I think is really foundational to understand in a Chesterton Academy. Foundationally, it's not about just rejecting a negative that we see in society. It's so easy to see the negatives that are around us, but it's really about choosing a positive. Take a look at Dante, because Dante goes through the Divine Comedy, he goes to the Inferno and then to Purgatory, and of course he wants us, along with him, to reject evil. But ultimately, his top desire is for us to have that desire for the highest and best thing, which is God. And that's really what Chesterton Academy is about, ultimately, is choosing the highest and the best, pursuing God, the desire to look upon the face of God. And it's then implicit in that is the rejection of the negative once one has embraced that which is the most beautiful and that which is the highest good.
Wonderful. I also have noticed you can't help but contrast a Chesterton Academy to and a different kind of private classical academy. And the biggest thing that I've seen as a difference, because often the curriculum is quite similar, there's a lot of similar study, but the biggest difference is that the main goal is not to get your kid into Harvard, although, maybe that would be nice. It's not,
Right.
it's not necessarily about that. It's a much more long-term goal of let's put these kids on a path for heaven, for success as a Catholic, for success as a leader in their family, in the church, in their community.
That's absolutely right. And so as you look at those hallmarks of the academy, the incarnational environment, well, what does that mean? I tell our students a lot of times, every book that you read here has the potential to change your life. That doesn't mean that every single one of them is going to, and it may be a different one for every student, but I truly, truly believe and have seen that every book has the potential to change our lives. And in every class, along with that, you have the opportunity to encounter Christ. And that's really the environment we're trying to set up. And once again, maybe you don't experience that at every class of every day, but trying to create the environment where you can encounter Christ in every class. And that is what is going to bring about a lasting and meaningful change in our society. And that's consistent with the writings and the thought of G.K. Chesterton too, right? That he's not afraid to call out false philosophy, ideology, disordered thought, but it comes from his sense of wonder at the good. Do you love something enough to change it? Loving something has to come before the changing of it if you really want a meaningful, lasting change.
I know one of the other obviously hallmarks or foundations of the Chesterton Academy is the importance of celebrating the Mass. And, I remember visiting the Chesterton Academy in Milwaukee and seeing how, this daily Mass, which was the sort of, I guess you would say, like, has a few of the dedicated daily parishioners, a lot of them, in an older section of age. And then in comes this sort of rush of about, 80 high school students, and they come in faithfully to attend Mass. And, and they do that daily. And I can only imagine, along with these other principles that are very tantamount to the academy, that the celebration of the Mass is got to be some sort of focal point. Can you talk about how that impacts your students? How you've seen students who maybe were not daily Mass attendees, now they have Mass as part of their regular routine?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I would really be loath to ever give up in one of the academies. I know some schools have it at the center of the day, in the middle of the day, and if the day is sort of centered around that, we begin with our structure. We begin the day with Mass in the mornings, and you really get the sense here that the graces flow out of that Mass into the school day from there, and that's really one of the things that allows us to do as much as we can do. I truly believe that, and a couple of the faculty have pointed that out. That the graces flow forth from that. We've seen the students that really opens a lot of their eyes to that. We're seeing increased participation in adoration. I know some of our students I believe it was last week, were getting together to go to adoration in the
That's
evening,
amazing.
and it draws them together, and coordinating that, of their own free will and their own accord. And I do think it's a blessing. I know it's a blessing to the people in the parish. And when we first started coming in, maybe we were a little overwhelming to that kind of nice, calm, quiet daily Mass. But I think they really, their comments lead me to believe they really appreciate the students being there, and seeing them, very reverent, devout. They conduct themselves reverently and professionally. And when we're not there, if there's a day when we're off school or something, we get a lot of questions. Where are your students today, or something? And I hope that it goes two ways, but I know that we've seen the blessing in the lives of our students in the day, the school day.
Beautiful, very beautiful. So can you just tell us quickly, you said you've been open for 6 years. Uh, how's it been? How's the growth going? What's it like as a kind of almost a veteran now at this point?
Yeah, thank you. It's a monumental task. It's always a monumental task to do something like that, and but a really important task. And this year, over the last year or so, has been exciting to see moving out of that sense of startup mode and more into a full growth mode. We're still a small school with our enrollment in the mid 30s. but it's been slow but steady growth. There's been some blessings in that, and the culture has been positive and tight knit community. And but it's exciting to see that growth mode as we can start to add a few extra programs, starting to add some athletics, see the vibrancy of these things that are going on, and it's an exciting time to be here and to have to be able to speak about the fruits that we have seen. That the students, they're doing well as they go off into the college world. Their placement is good, but more than that, see the leadership that they are displaying here and beyond. And one of my favorite things is that you see the seniors start to embrace what it means to be a Chesterton Academy student, and they start looking this time of year to their legacy that they want to leave behind, and calling the younger students up to it. And what is this that I want to leave behind, and how do I want to impact those students after I leave this place, and see it perpetuated? And they really understand. There may be some sadness about graduating and moving on, but they understand the calling, the importance of moving on to the next phase of their life, what they're called to, and then leaving behind something that will perpetuate this that's been important to them.
That's a beautiful level of maturity that I really hope to see in my own children as they graduate. Wonderful.
Sure.
Over these 6 years, I'm curious as if from when you started, right? And I assume someone asked you, said, Dr. Russell, would you consider being the headmaster of the academy? You took it to discernment, you prayed about it, and you said, I'm making this up, but I can only imagine that you, being the man that you are, really kind of, you prayed about it, you thought about it, and you said, yes, I will take this on because I believe in the mission. So if any of that's wrong, please just correct me.
No, that's very consistent. Thank you. I appreciate the kindness in that.
But from where maybe where you started to where you are now as a headmaster, can you sort of say, I've seen the purpose of my role sort of change. I understand better now what it is and what I do, what I'm here for, because I don't think you're just a head figure as the headmaster. I think that your role is probably much more important to the students. So has there been a transition from where you started to where you are now? And what do you see as your purpose as the headmaster?
What I would say to that is, we as the teachers, as the leaders of the school, are reading these great works that our students are reading, and they can't help but form us also. And what are we supposed to be formed into? It's supposed to be formed into being more like Christ himself. What kind of man do I want to be? Right? Well, ecce homo, behold the man, and the man is humble and hanging on the cross. And I think ultimately that in the leadership, you have to try to pursue that and model that kind of that which you want your students to become, and be that for them, and hopefully encourage your faculty and help serve them. Ultimately, I think that the leader has to be a servant of the others, and in those first years, there's a lot of boots on the ground work trying to get this up and rolling, and so we've got to do this or manage this, and some very practical tasks that are associated with that. But you're really ultimately trying to grow yourself in your own personal life, your spiritual life, and hopefully calling others to that, modeling that, being at the service of the students, being at the service of the families and the parents, being at the service of the faculty members. We could not do, it's not a one-man show. It's not a one-man show. We couldn't do this without the formation that the students are getting in all of their classes, the exposure that they're getting to faithful faculty members, and we could not do this without the parents. I say this at every parent, any event we bring parents into. I try to make sure and say this, that we recognize the honor, the privilege that we have to come alongside of them, as they are the primary educators of their kids. And it is a great honor and a great privilege to be alongside of them. And I don't know. I think when I think about leadership, I think about King David and his last words to. Sorry, maybe I'm kind of getting into a little bit sort of more philosophical kind of
Please do.
theological thought here, maybe than what we were looking for. But King David's last words to Solomon, he that ruleth over men must be just. And I think there's a couple of things in that he's encouraging anybody who's in a position of leadership. You have to be just. You have to be just, the most just thing, honoring God and giving him his due. But there's also some aspect in that the one who is truly trying to be just realizes their own shortcomings, and that they realize at some level it's not necessarily just to be in the leadership position at all, because you do recognize those things, and there's a sort of I don't know, a kind of humility that needs to come out of that, and an understanding. So I guess what I would say, ultimately, is trying to hopefully grow and be as excited about learning and growing personally as we want our students to be, and trying to be at the service of our students, of our families, and of our faculty.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you for that.
I just want to take a quick minute to remind our listeners, if you are interested in the Chesterton Schools Network, please visit chestertonschoolsnetwork.org to learn more. And if you're interested in starting an academy, or you're just interested in finding one, or you're just curious, that's a good place to start. So chestertonschoolsnetwork.org if you're interested in learning more. Well, let's just, I don't know, since we have a little time, and of course, I do actually want to make it all about music. So there's kind of another thing that distinguishes the curriculum for the Chesterton Academy is the sort of intentional integration of all the subjects: math, humanities, arts. They're all integrated, and you really do your best to show the students how they are all connected. Can you give us an example of how that would work? And feel free to use music if you want.
Yeah, let me see what I can do with that. In there are several really great benefits from having the music as a part of the curriculum, the required part of the curriculum. And maybe let me focus on two of them, and I can at least show some of the integration. Number one, there's a sort of a development of the appetite. If I am eating junk food all the time, I'm going to have a craving for junk food. But if I'm eating better food and healthier food, I tend to have more of a craving for that. And again, it comes back to this, choosing a positive, trying to use the highest and best of the materials that are out there. And there's this sort of development of the appetite that comes from that, a desire for more of that good. And one of the other things that then comes along with that, with the music, is the understanding of the power of music, the power that is there. Plato talks about, and they've read Plato, and they see where he talks about how it has the ability to reach around the reason and touch directly to the emotions. And so you see that, you start to understand that kind of power that exists in that. And then as they're learning about character development, the course of their classes in the house system, just generally being encouraged, that you start to then have to ask the question, how does this influence me? And there's some deep ways. There are some kind of funny ways. Sometimes I talk some days about sort of, all right, everybody, it's the ruin your favorite song day. It's the ruin your favorite song day, and talk about how once we are faced with the understanding of the power of music, and then we're armed with a little bit of understanding of theology and philosophy, you start to see some of, we have to be more careful. We're called to be careful with what we listen to. Funny example recently, and I don't need to just pick on any particular song, but a couple of our students were singing a Disney song, the old from Aladdin, I Can Show You the World, and this came up one day, and we had a little discussion around this, that when I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, I don't remember, splendid, tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? And our students that have just read Dante immediately opened their eyes, and it really big, and kind of gasped and said, letting your heart decide, and kind of immediately got into this discussion of the intellect guiding the will and guiding the passions. And, I can show you the world, but there's something better to see. I don't know, it's kind of a silly example, but it's a practical example of the way it changes the way we take in what's out there, right? And it came through the positive, the selection, the choice of something good led us to a rejection of something that's maybe a lesser philosophy. So no commentary here on my, I'm not trying to comment on the musical value of that, but just when the students are in this environment of character development, reading philosophy, reading the great works of literature, listening to great music, seeing great paintings, there is an ordering of thought and desire. The ordo amoris of St. Augustine. We're ordering our thoughts and passions towards God, or trying to, and it changes the way we see the world around us.
That's wonderful, and I think one of the most valuable things we can hopefully give our children is the ability to discern what they're taking in, because, we can choose sometimes, and sometimes it's sort of just forced upon us. We're in a situation and, we're just inundated with media all the time, so the ability to discern and to choose and just to look critically is so valuable. It's wonderful to see that.
I had several students from here. I guess this is also related to the music at some extent. Four of our students recently attended an honor choir event here locally at one of the colleges and universities, and it was there were a couple of pieces that they had an opportunity to perform and sing, and it was interesting to see kind of their reaction to some of the music that's out there. Compared to some of these and greatest works and most beautiful works of choral music that have existed, and they do start to see this kind of choice. Right? There's a choice ultimately that we make in life, and that's one of the kind of down in sort of in the hallmarks or basis of the academy. There are two ways set before you, oh man, the way of life and the way of death. We see that sort of secular humanistic view, or we have that way of following God. And one of our seniors closed a philosophy essay with kind of a play on words on a couple of these pieces that they perform. That we essentially have this choice. The incarnation gives man. This is reading from his essay. The incarnation gives man a clear and distinct choice of where they will allow their lives to be led, down the path of inner fire, where dark passions rage, anxious to be let out, or the way of the laudate Domini, the praising of God, who is creator, father, and redeemer. And it really is the choice that's set before us. And all of the classes are ordered towards that we see that in the beauty of the art, the beauty of the music, the philosophy you study, the math and the science show us that incredible ordering of the universe, that's just points to that creation, points to that magnificent creation. And as they see what they discover in math and science and learn how to measure, describe, and understand the world God made, it ties into that sense of overall wonder and that choice that they do end up making.
Mm, beautiful.
I'm curious in this. I hope it's something you can find a way to be succinct about. But I know that in regards to music, you have sort of, I would maybe call it a personal philosophy, not just about how Chesterton and philosophy and music can sort of bridge a gap, and the intellect now comes into play in a way. When you now look at a Disney song, you'll never look at it the same way again. That's one side of the equation. But the other side is, don't you have also sort of a thought about how music really can impact the mind? Because you did a presentation this past summer called the Sound of Ideas, and it was a much sort of deeper presentation into sort of the importance of music and how it plays a role sort of in the human person. Is there a way to sort of explain that in a way that the listeners could sort of get a brief handle on that?
I think so. The idea is that the music, our art, music, literature, all of these creations reflect the culture of the society, the ideas of the society in which they were created. And so you hear music that's very, very beautiful, and it generally tends to be indicative of a society that's ordered towards beauty. Or you can hear some that's a little bit more cacophonous, perhaps, and that maybe there's some kind of disorder that's being reflected in the ideology behind that. And that was, one of the essences, I guess, maybe the essence of that talk and that recital that I gave at the summit and the society conference in last year. And that is music touches on all of these things. It touches on the emotions. It does train the mind. It trains us to be disciplined, like we were talking about earlier. It's orderly. There are ways in which it is mathematical. Physics are in play behind that. And all of those things come together in this in the way that we think about it. We have to be disciplined to do it. It exposes us to great beauty. That, beauty is the splendor of truth, and it's very orderly and pulls in that that orderliness, that left brain orderliness that we have as we think about math and science too. And it's a great training ground. And then just personally, the students will oftentimes, as they come into that, they find that they have a love of something or an ability in a place that they didn't know they had, and that opens them oftentimes up to exploring more areas that they might not have otherwise explored.
I think it's just also interesting because I think that the human soul, will say, can recognize something beautiful. Whether if a person listens to the most garbage-esque music around, if they suddenly were presented with something that was beautiful, that their mind would recognize it as such. Even if it was kind of a shock to their system, but that they can't help
Mhm.
but recognize beauty. They might say, "Oh, what is this? I don't like this. This is, I don't," but that they know something is happening. That sort of music, it puts something inside that you just can't get away from. Because I think that, God intended us to be drawn towards what is good, and beautiful music is a way to sort of ignite that inside of us. So I appreciate your explanation, because I just wish more people were sort of, introduced to music the way that the Chesterton Academy students are introduced to music, because I'm sure it is benefiting them in ways that they may not even know when they first get there.
We've certainly seen that, and in the years of traveling and touring and performing as a pianist, I saw that so often, in the realm of this great, beautiful music, but how often it can become about ourselves, right? That I'm the performer, the emphasis on the performer, that sort of stardom that you can see developed in performers a lot of time, and there is that. Yeah, fundamentally, music was created for us to praise God and give God His due. The end of "O God, beyond all praising," one of our staple songs around here, and make a joyful duty our sacrifice of praise. And that's really what music is ultimately for: praising the glory of God and reflecting that beautiful splendor of the truth of who He is.
Amen. Beautiful. I kind of specialize in Gregorian chant, and what else is a more fitting example? I mean, literally written to express the words, which how often do you see that anywhere anymore? It's quite a wonder. And one of the things that I love most about music, and I would assume you guys bring it out too, is the more you look, the more you see in good music, the more you dig, the more you find. Um, and it just seems like that's a staple of every subject in the Chesterton Academies.
It is. It's like opening a gift, and you continue to peel back more layers of that, more layers of the wrapping, and then we're into this, and there's another layer, and it's true of the literature. It's true of going deeper with math and science, all of these things, and of course, ultimately reflective of pursuing God, and how deeply we can pursue Him, and still that still the great mystery of that which we still don't
Mm,
know and understand.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Russell. We do have to wrap up, but thank you so very much for sharing with us the story of the Chesterton Academy of the Sacred Heart. So wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here and to chat with you. And thank you very much for this time.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Albert, for joining us as always.
Always good to be here.
And as usual, you can find us on the website at chesterton.org. Click on the podcast button. And if you're interested more in learning more about the Chesterton Schools Network, simply visit chestertonschoolsnetwork.org to find out more. Again, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. And remember, Chesterton is always better with friends.